Hunter... does he even have a last name? Hunter is an interesting character for several reasons, be it his plot significance, his potential as theory crafting material, or the fact that it's super easy to put him through unnecessary amounts of pain. But as an aspiring writer, what I find most interesting about him is his characterization in relation to the Hexside kids. They are there for every step of his journey and can even relate to it in a way I can only describe as masterful on the writer's parts. Separate Ties officially introduces us to the Golden Guard. He's interesting enough as the Emperor's playful enforcer, but going back to it with the full context of who Hunter is reveals something else. He has the same motivation as Luz. Sure, he's got more power, but in the end, they were on the same ship, hunting the same creature to please their parental figures. Luz was motivated by feeling she was a burden on Eda and sought to help hunt the Selkie Dharmas to help provide for them financially. While Hunter was less financially motivated, later explorations into his character show that every aspect of his life is done in order to prove he's useful to the Emperor. While Eda tells Luz not to feel like a burden and take all the guilt onto herself, Hunter has been raised to think that way. In this episode, we get a more official introduction to Hunter and his situation, and we learn two facts. He really wants to help and impress his uncle, and he is, in fact, a huge magic nerd, despite, or probably because, of his inability to do magic. Like Luz, they both find themselves involved with Palismen for different reasons. Luz to understand why she's even learning magic in the first place, and Hunter to accomplish a mission for his uncle, who needs them to handle the condition that turns him into a violent monster. Wait a second. But once they are forced together because Kikimora is a little hater, they bond over the fact that they are in fact nerds with an interest in wild magic as well as their thoughts on their futures. Hunter is grateful that his uncle provided one for him, in contrast to Luz, who's unsure of hers. Though Hunter does express jealousy that Luz will be able to choose her own future, unlike him, who doesn't even know what future he's been selected for. This will be extra painful when future information is divulged. This bond leads to them making concessions in their goals. Luz gives Hunter back his staff, the source of his magic, risking failing to protect the Palismen from him. And Hunter tells Luz his name and protects her while he fights Kikimora, giving her a chance to escape and actually failing his mission. This would have consequences in his next major appearance, especially when Belos pours on the guilt with how disappointed he is that the thanks he gets for taking Hunter in is his failure. Also,
and if you told me how wild magic did this to you, I might be able to find out. My apologies.
In his quest to be involved in the most important part of everyone's character development, Hunter meets Amity in his next episode. In this episode, we see an even clearer picture of Belos' emotional manipulation and Hunter's desire to prove himself.
Everyone has a use, Hunter. The Titan has big plans for you, and it would be such a hassle to find a replacement.
As of the episode before this, Amity and Luz officially began dating, but Amity begins to feel the need to validate the fact that she is, indeed, an awesome girlfriend. She kept repeating it to the point where it became a meme, and she seemed extra testy when it came to accomplishing their mission of finding Titan blood while Luz was sick. Actually, oddly enough, she kind of reminded me of Hunter when he's wearing his mask, minus the humor. Even Hunter can tell they're there for similar reasons and tries to give her advice about it. Unfortunately, he's an abused child soldier who's way too dependent on an uncle that doesn't care about him, and he just makes her feel worse by enforcing the idea that you must be able to bring results in a relationship to prove your worth. Otherwise, you're just being a disappointment. It sounds silly if you know Luz, but that's not that dissimilar to how Amity's lived most of her life. Being paired with Eda and King at their most unserious probably didn't help. Fortunately, King pointed out to her and reminds her that she's like 75% done with her character arc, and she snaps out of it and gives a pretty good speech.
I grew up thinking that everything was an opportunity to justify existing.
Amity Blight, you are in so much trouble.
But there are people out there who won't make you feel worthless. You just have to let yourself meet them.
Unfortunately, Hunter is only about 10% through with his own and is still more interested in pleasing his uncle than confronting the idea that he's not a good influence. It's realistic but sad. It also emphasizes just how far Amedy's come from the point where she'd probably make the same decision. On the plus side, we get an awesome fight scene out of it, and the promise of possible drama between Luz's most emotionally compromised friends. Friends her own age. Now that Hunter has been properly established as a character, Season 2B was about giving him character growth, mostly by tearing him down. But we are not at that point yet. I think this was a really important episode because of how its events affect the future episode. It shows the effects of Hunter's isolation and, after the fiasco of Eclipse Lake, displays that there is good in him to the audience before he's crushed by the reality of who his uncle is and has to switch sides for his own safety. And it all happens while giving Willow some much needed focus. This is where the way Hunter mirrors the other characters of the cast begins to pay off, because it means that episodes can explore him, explore whoever's accompanying him on his, how did Toph put it?
A life-changing field trip with Hunter.
And grow their bond. Actually, that's probably why Zuko goes on those life-changing trips with Team Avatar. But his characterization didn't mirror theirs as much as Hunter's mirrors the Hexside kids. Which makes sense, he was already an established character by the time he joined their team. But getting back on topic, this episode features the start of Hunter's actual growth, as well as more insight into his shitty childhood.
Well, where I come from, even chances have to be earned. Especially if you're considered half a witch like me.
Friends don't stab each other in the back.
Sure they do. The Coven heads do it all the time back at the castle. How do we evaluate others? A witch's duel? A maze full of traps? Oh, leave everyone at the top of a mountain and see who makes it back to the bottom alive.
That time we were left alone on a mountain?
Classic.
How old was Hunter when he joined the Emperor's Coven again? Hunter's motivation here is proving himself, something you can imagine a powerless witch would feel the need to do. Specifically, proving he's worthy of the Golden Guard sigil to Darius, who thinks he isn't because he doesn't measure up to the previous guard.
You're very good at doing exactly what you're told.
So Hunter does what he's told and goes looking for witches to recruit to the Emperor's Coven. And he meets Willow. Hunter and Willow are actually pretty great for each other because without any preconceptions of who the other is, be it the magicless Golden Guard or half a witch Willow, they are both exposed to and accepting of more honest sides of each other in a way those who knew them before wouldn't be so quick to see. See how Amedy acted in Labyrinth Hunters. And when one sees their insecurities in the other, they do what they can to build each other up. Willow's dilemma in this episode is trying to prove herself and start a flyer derby team, a sport she's taken an increased interest in since the episode that gave us this.
Oh, wow, sports.
She's trying to raise her confidence, and frankly, it's a joy to watch. And without the pressure of trying to please his uncle, Hunter's free to be the awkward, isolated kid we all knew he was and bonds with the Emerald entrails, giving him the motivation to stand up to Darius despite his desire to prove himself. This is something he couldn't really do with his uncle because his uncle was trying to kill him, so it's nice to get a smaller version of it with Darius. This impresses Darius, who wanted to see Hunter show some individuality, also something that would become more important in future episodes. The big one. This episode uses all the development and growth Hunter's had over his appearances to determine the right angle with which to hit him and cause maximum pain. The commonality between Hunter and Luz in this episode is their relationship with Belos/Philip, and the revelation of who exactly he is. Luz was already aware Philip was an asshole, but she had no idea he'd become the nigh immortal, monstrous ruler of the Boiling Isles. Hunter lived his whole life thinking his uncle was a benevolent savior who has never done anything wrong and works for the good of everyone. To that end, he does whatever he asks in order to assist him in his goal. And as we learn in this episode, he's been doing so for hundreds of years. his predecessors helping in whatever act of terrorism Belos asked them, only to eventually rebel, be destroyed, and rebuilt as a new Grimwalker because after 400 years, Belos still hasn't figured out that his brother wasn't the problem. And while Luz has a less mind-destroying revelation, she does learn that she did help Belos with his rise to power. With the heavy suggestion the Titan was keeping Belos from learning about glyphs, her showing him the light glyph, something she only learned due to access to modern technology, undoubtedly made this genocidal witch hunter's rise to power that much easier. And notably, season 2 ends with both of them deciding to keep this fact a secret from their friends because of how they feel they'll be judged for it. We'll see what happens in season 3. But focusing more on Hunter, his world comes crashing down on him. Forget half a witch, he's not a witch. Forget trying to prove he's valuable, he was literally created to be replaceable. Forget having a destiny from the Titan, that's just a lie made up to keep him in line. And when Belos realizes that Hunter's not being obedient, he immediately tries to murder him. Because of course he does. After spending the episode talking about how his uncle is a saint he's honored to work with, he learns that he's the devil. And he runs away. Because of course he does. And by the end of it, both characters are haunted by who they've inadvertently helped in their blind admiration of the same person. This is actually the last episode concerning Hunter's growth. Yes, he appears in the last 2 episodes of the season, but he doesn't really have any character development. Sure, they could have connected his relationship with Belos to Amidy's and her mother's to reconcile them, but that would have bloated the episode and removed focus from Amity and Luz. I suppose that can wait for season 3. Which, as I keep saying this, I'm more and more reminded that it has been shortened and it's unfortunate. But getting back on track. Now that Hunter's run the gauntlet through most of the kids, and Luz got an extra one because she's the protagonist, it's Gus's turn. This episode dives deep into Gus and the insecurities he feels as a child prodigy, as well as how he often wound up being taken advantage of. Do I even need to say it? After the events of Hollow Mine, Gus discovers Hunter living in the school and hiding from the Emperor's Coven. At the same time, the head of the Illusion Coven comes to Hexside to brand the students with Coven sigils ahead of the Day of Unity. Hunter helps Gus escape, but despite that shows trouble trusting him with his whole "the Emperor is hunting me down and also evil" backstory. So Gus elaborates on his own history having trouble trusting people. Hunter repays the favor later when they talk about the idea of trusting themselves. Whereas Gus has issues controlling his power under stress, Hunter's got more psychological issues with his relationship with Belos, who he still deep down hopes he's wrong about, despite the mountain of evidence to the contrary. Despite that, he tells Gus that they still have to trust themselves to know what to do and not be trapped by a prison of limiting illusions of their own making. After they send Grey on his way, that rhymed, Hunter's ready to admit to himself and the student of Hexside the apocalyptic future they have in store. Also, notes on Willow. The B-plot is about Amity finally seeing Willow for who she really is as a strong witch, while, like I said earlier, without preconceived notions, Hunter is able to tell a fake Amity from the real one based on how scared she was pretending to be. Even Gus couldn't see through it. Hunter's not yet done developing, especially after watching his uncle get splattered into Belos' trunks. There's still his whole reconciliation with Amity and the fact that they both have shady parental figures, and the fact that he and Luz aren't being completely honest about exactly what they saw in Hollow Mind. Though Gus probably knows after his little trip into the Emperor's mind. And conveniently, now they're in the human world, where they can learn about Philip and Caleb's history with the place. And Hunter's going to have to come to terms with all of that. Also, V, a basilisk created by Belos in his attempts to resurrect her dead race. Looks like Hunter's not done with his life-changing field trips just yet. How do you think season 3 will go for our Golden Grimwalker? Tell me in the comments below, and while you're down there, hit the like button and subscribe for more content. Thank you and good day.